Here are the highlights from the newest Heritage Era Coin Showcase auction. Let's start out with a fun and rather dramatic double-struck Era coin on a modern clad Lincoln cent. You can see that the coin was struck completely off-center, got spun around, and was struck a second time, again completely off-center. Now, the PCGS slab only says 1982 to 1988 as a possible date range. That is based on the memorial reverse and the fact that we can see the zinc core of the coin as the copper cladding tears away. But we can do better than that. The date is clearly a 19 with another partial 9, and the reverse has a close AM design, which then places the coin at least between 1993 and 1999. PCGS awarded a grade of MS65 red, and the coin was sold at auction for $312. Here is another Lincoln cent Era coin, this time from 2021, where the coin suffered a catastrophic die break on the reverse. That resulted in a massive retained cud on the entire southeast portion of the coin. You can tell that the die break was complete because a portion is completely missing below Lincoln's tie, and the section below the break has shifted and full striking pressure was not achieved. It is graded as MS65 red and sold at auction for $336. Sometimes you can get a coin where just about everything seems to go wrong all at once. Here we have a Lincoln cent from 1943, struck at the San Francisco Mint. But instead of a steel cent, as you would expect, this coin was struck on a silver dime planchet. In addition to that, it was also struck off-center, and then it managed to get clipped somewhere along the way as well. Although it is likely that the latter is a post-mint damage. Graded by PCGS as AU details, it achieved a closing price at auction of $990. An interesting steel cent from 1943 presents itself for inspection now. On this case, the PCGS label reports a 20% obverse indent. This can rather obviously be seen right across the date and Lincoln's face, or rather where those elements should have been. But the reverse of the coin is hardly affected. It seems that something, likely a second blank planchet, was fed into the press too soon. It did not enter the collar, but rather occluded a portion of the obverse, leaving that part of the first coin blank as we see here. This coin is slabbed by PCGS with a grade of MS62, and by auction's conclusion had sold for $1,320. Ah, yes. And here we have an absolutely brilliant example of an Era coin known as a Flipover double struck, which is where the coin gets struck normally at first, but then instead of ejecting from the press, it briefly gets stuck before flipping over and landing perfectly into the collar and then being struck for a second time, but in the reverse orientation compared to the first striking, leaving details from both the obverse and reverse on both sides of the coin. It was graded by PCGS as MS63 brown and sold at auction for $1,320. A 1965 Washington quarter dollar that was struck on the wrong planchet. In this event, a clad dime planchet that was supposed to become a Roosevelt dime found itself instead in the press for Washington quarters. Due to the smaller size, we have a small portion of the rim which is perfectly formed, while the rest of the coin and much of the legend itself is left out completely. This piece is graded by PCGS as MS64 and sold at auction for a total of $1,680. Here is a fascinating error coin to look at. This 1909 SVDB cent is slabbed by PCGS as a planchet lamination mint error. What we are looking for here is the uneven color in the coin itself. The problem is actually with the planchet, or the metal blank itself. You see, in a case like this, the alloy, in this event bronze, was either improperly mixed or impurities were allowed to enter into the mix, leading to the mesmerizing wood grain effect that we can see on coins like this. Graded by PCGS as MS62 red-brown and sold at auction for $1,860. Then we have a coin that was struck on the wrong planchet, but this time it is a Franklin $half coin struck on a much smaller $quarter planchet. Because the planchet was smaller, metal flow during striking allowed the blank to expand towards the collar to form a slightly elongated or oblong shape. While the date is fortunately perfectly formed, the words Liberty, United, and Half are completely off the flan. Graded by PCGS as MS65, it was sold at auction for $2,160. And then, for fans of overstruck or dual denomination error coins, there were several examples to choose from, especially in the form of a Lincoln cent that was struck onto an existing Roosevelt dime coin. There was this example from 1999, or perhaps another from a decade prior, minted in 1989, all from the Philadelphia Mint, or even a coin from 2001 as well, graded by NGC as MS68, the latter of which was sold at auction for the amount of $2,340. Now, at first casual glance, this might seem like a normal 1964 Jefferson nickel, until you notice that the color of the coin is completely off, and that it is, in fact, copper, because this is a 1964 proof Jefferson nickel that was struck on a Lincoln cent planchet. And because the cent is slightly smaller than the nickel, the rim towards the right was not fully struck up, making this an off-metal and wrong planchet error coin at the same time. Graded by PCGS as proof 58, it passed over the auction block for a total of $2,400. A spectacular 1964 Lincoln cent coin is up next. Here we can see a triple struck example of this copper coin, which was first normally struck. That is the center impression. The coin then failed to eject properly from the press and somehow spun itself around almost 180 degrees and was then struck for a second time, this time partially out of color and off-center. All the while, a blank planchet was fed into the press normally. That is why the second impression did not leave a duplicate impression on the reverse of the coin. That accounts for the top or the dominant impression. And then the coin was almost ejected fully, but still managed to get struck a third time, just barely leaving the letters T, R, U, and S. It was graded by NGC as MS64 red and brown and sold at auction for $3,600. And then lastly, we have an absolutely terrific error coin to admire. This is a dual or double denomination error coin, created when an existing Lincoln cent from 1978 was somehow fed into or ended up inside the coining press of a Jefferson nickel. That 1978 penny was then struck normally as a Jefferson nickel for 1979 at the Philadelphia Mint, which is how we end up with a remnant of the Lincoln Memorial seemingly embedded into the Monticello building. This spectacular coin was graded by PCGS as MS63 Red Brown and sold at auction for $5,520. Subscribe to WNN and feel free to watch another video about error coins right here. Next, for the World Numismatic News, I am Numisman saying thank you for watching, keep collecting, and have a fantastic day.